Why, hello there, friends. It's Emma here, the Bookish Princess. It's been a minute, I know, since I last talked to you guys. I think it was summer when I had my last post, and now fall has almost passed us by. So before autumn is completely behind us, I thought I would sit down and it'd be fun to have a little catch up, share with you the books I've been enjoying this fall, share some of my fun adventures. I've been prioritizing real life over online life or digital uploads, but I do still have lots of videos that I'd like to get around to editing at some point, and lots of different projects that I'd like to finish, like my book. The Book of Cymbeline III came out exactly a year ago. I have 3 of them in my series. You've probably heard me talk about them before. But I'd like to do a 4th, and like it hasn't happened. You know, I feel like the inspiration for it hasn't come yet. So I'll have to wait for that. But if you haven't picked these up, I would definitely recommend it. When I came out with the first one, the first Book of Cymbeline, like that was the one that, you know, a lot of people picked up, which was so wonderful. But it was like in the 2nd and 3rd that I feel like I was really hitting my stride. So like if you haven't, make sure you go and grab these. And the Book of Cymbeline III especially, I feel like the characters and the illustrations were all just really, really good. They are kind of standalone, so you don't have to get all 3, but you can get them as ebooks or as print books on Amazon, so I'll link them down below. But yes, I'm leaving all those ideas, the Book of Cymbeline and my video projects that I'd like to get to, I'm just leaving them in God's hands, and when it's time, when the time is right, He will give me a nudge and make sure I get to that. But this year I've just been busy with so many new things and made so many friends and have been doing really well, so that's wonderful. I've been doing a lot of dancing. Dancing is like my favorite new hobby. I do ballroom dancing and swing dancing and line dancing. If you're looking for a new hobby, just like look for line dancing, swing dancing around you. I didn't realize that there were these little communities that still do it and kept it alive. I just think partner dancing is so, so magical. I'm gonna link this in the Substack post, bookishprincess.substack.com. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can go check it out over there. But my favorite Catholic blogger, her name's Dorothy Cummings McLean. She is really into traditional partner dancing, and she kind of co-wrote a piece about why Catholics should dance. She also has her own blog that kind of focuses on dancing. And I really love the way she articulates it, because I think there are so, so many good and wonderful things about dancing. And now we're gonna dance our way through this video, which is going to be a bit of a mess. I have a bunch of different things that I want to include in it, so this is just a sort of chatty catch-up letter. Back in August, I did go on a Disney trip with my family, which was really, really fun. And Athos, my brother, was there, and he had been reading a bunch of interesting things, so we sat down and filmed a little segment. And I'm trying to decide, like, do I put that in now so that we go like kind of chronologically through the reads, or maybe I'll just catch you up on what I've been reading lately, and then we'll sort of hop back in time, and I'll put some little chapters on the video so you can hop ahead to whichever part you want. I have still been doing the book club that I do with subscribers. That has been really fun, and we've had some lovely reads. In case you're all interested, there are 2 more meetings of the book club coming up. We're going to be discussing Mary Hall by Beverly Nichols. Beverly Nichols is a garden writer. He's kind of like P.G. Wodehouse, but he writes about gardens and houses and cats and beautiful Britishness, and he's just so clever and funny, and I absolutely love his books. Mary Hall was a house that he lived in. That's what the book is about. And we're going to be discussing that on Wednesday, December 4th at 7 o'clock Eastern time. That's technically our November book, but we pushed the meeting to December because Thanksgiving is so late this year. But we do also have a December Christmas book. We're going to be reading Holly Claus by Brittany Ryan, which this was one of our book club members' suggestions, and it sounds really charming. Holly Claus is the daughter of Santa Claus. If you're not in the book club and would like to participate in that, just send me an email, emma@bookishprincess.com. That email list is separate from like the Substack email newsletter that goes out. So just drop me an email and I can get you on the list if you're not on it already. But our most recent book club read was The 3 Brides by Charlotte Mary Yonge. This was for Victober. Charlotte Mary Yonge was more popular than Dickens in her day, and I don't understand why she's not as popular, because I absolutely love her books. They're just so chock full of goodness, like beautiful writing, warm characters, interesting vignettes, super intelligent references. She begins each chapter with an epigraph, so like a little line from some poem or play, and they're all so clever and so apt. Like they fit the theme of the chapter so perfectly. And reading her books just makes you realize that people have been the same throughout history. You know, the family dynamics and like the bickering and the subtle interactions between her characters are just exactly exactly the same as what you experience out in the world. I just think Charlotte Mary Yonge is delightful. The Three Brides is about, as it says on the tin, three brides. This family has, I think, is it 5 or 6 sons? And 3 of them get married all at the same time, and they like all arrive home literally on the same day. One of them is like in the Navy, and so he's out at sea, and so he just sends his bride home. You're thrown in literally at the deep end on the day all 3 brides arrive, and you don't know who anybody is. And I think with Charlotte Mary Yonge, you have to like a lot of characters. It always, because she always gives you a lot of characters, and they're all beautifully drawn, and they're all sympathetic, even when they disagree. But it takes a while to figure out who's who. This one wasn't too bad. When I read Pillars of the House, that has like 12 orphans, and they all have like nicknames that they call each other. That one took me forever to figure out who is who. This one was also challenging because there are multiple names for different characters, but it wasn't too bad. It's worth the effort of figuring out who's who. It was really fun to discuss in the book club who liked different characters the most. Like, were you team Cecil? Were you team Rosamund? I was totally team Rosamund. Rose and Julius were my favorite characters. I just loved them so much. Rose's warmth, her Irish warmth was so beautiful. But everyone's trying to fit in with the family, and they are like a very prominent family in the neighborhood. Raymond, the oldest son, is like the member for Parliament, so he's involved with everything, and they take their responsibilities really seriously. It's beautiful to see like the impact they have in the community and how involved they are with everything. Julius is the parson, so he's always involved with the parishioners. There is a very serious crisis, a very serious disease spreads throughout the community, and it makes you realize how lucky we are to live today, where there's, you know, modern medicine. One thing you should definitely know about Charlotte Mary Yonge is that she is not shy about killing off her characters. So don't get too attached, because probably someone you like and care about is gonna die, probably multiple. But it does kind of remind you of just memento mori, you know, the truth of life. We're all going to die one day. And it's beautiful to see her characters try to make the most of their lives. Religion and spirituality is always a big theme. These characters are always really wrestling with moral questions and how to live out their faith. But there's also humor, there's also romance. I already put a couple quotations in the Substack, but just a couple of the funny little lines I highlighted when the brides arrive in the house, because they're all living in the same house too, with their mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law is still, it's her house. And yet it's not like the mother-in-law is the bad guy. It's not like the brides are the bad guys. They're all relatable and interesting. But one of them says about like a nicely decorated room, this only wants to be littered down, which I like. It's true. We all like to have our sort of litter, our like little trinkets about us that make the room feel like home. It's Rose who says this. That's my first task in fresh quarters, banishing some things and upsetting the rest, and strewing our own about judiciously. We hear that one of the lesser characters rejoiced in the peculiar name of dilemma. Isn't that crazy? There's a fantastic Christmas party scene, which is just a sheer delight. I think Charlotte Mary Yonge must have been part of a Christmas party like this herself, must have thrown one, but it's like so beautifully orchestrated that it makes me want to throw a Christmas party like this. But this is the note that they send to their friends. I'm desired by Mrs. Poinsett to say that the ladies' party already proposed for the 3rd is to undergo a little expansion, and that she much hopes to see you and your party at 7 o'clock disposed for a few Christmas amusements. There's like wheels within wheels for the Christmas party too, because one of the characters has already arranged a ladies' party that like the others do not really approve of. It's like not really a good idea. So they're like figuring out how to subtly maneuver around her, and it's delightful. So that was our October book club read. The September book club read was The Perilous Gard by Elizabeth Marie Pope. I've mentioned this author before. She wrote The Sherwood Ring, which I also love. Those are really the 2 main books that she wrote. She also wrote a very scholarly book, because she was a university professor, about Paradise Regained, Milton's Paradise Regained, and I bought that and read it and hugely enjoyed it. But I wish she'd written more fiction, because it's just so good, and her scholarly acumen, like her knowledge, she weaves in. This book is set in Elizabethan England. Queen Elizabeth is not yet queen. It's Queen Mary, and some of Elizabeth's waiting maids get in trouble, and one of them, Catherine Sutton, gets banished to this castle called the Perilous Gard. And clearly there's some strange goings on. Even as she's riding through the forest, she sees someone in the offing. I loved the description of her arrival in Elvenwood. It was raining again, a thin, cold, misty rain that penetrated to the bone. Even under the huge trees, there was very little shelter. The rain threaded and beaded every branch and leaf and twig, dripping mournfully at the jarring thud of the horses' hooves. In the silence, immense, dark, overwhelming, shouldering over the road, towering like castles, the great trees rose, pressed about the horses and their riders, melting away on every side into depth on depth of green shadow that opened a little to let them through and then closed in behind them again. If I had to make a list of my top books and like really had to narrow it down, this would be on the list. Like probably top 10 books of all time. I just think it's so wonderful, and I just love the way all the different elements come together. There's fairies and magic, but it's not really done in the way you would expect it. It's done in a sort of realistic way. And the fairies, this was another interesting book club conversation, like how much do you sympathize with the fairies? Their morals in some areas are definitely questionable, but their morals in other areas are very upright. Kate ends up getting to know the fairy people very, very well, and it's so interesting the way she is dealing with, well, this she admires about them, but this she really doesn't, while she's also fighting against them. Kate, the main character, is just such a strong person. And so is Christopher, our hero, and I feel like I'm doing a very poor job summing up this book. There are just too many things I love about it. Fall was a pretty fantastic time to read it, though, because a lot of it takes place in the fall, and the big denouement is on All Hallows Eve. And I love how faith is woven into this as well. I love the subtle way it comes out. Another book that was very fun for fall was Betsy in Spite of Herself by Hart Lovelace. It's been way too long since I last reread the Betsy Tacy series. If you've never heard of this, definitely go check it out. It is so charming. Hart Lovelace, it starts when the character Betsy and her friends Tacy and Tib are like 5 or 6 years old, and then it goes all the way up through their childhood, through their high school years, and we even get to see Betsy's wedding and Betsy in the Great World when she goes and travels in Europe right on the eve of World War I. But she's growing up in a small town in Minnesota at the start of the 1900s. And it's just so warm and wise and comforting, and the characters are all so true to life because Hart Lovelace drew them all from her own life. She is very much describing her own life and her own childhood. And so you really feel like you get to go back in time and get to spend a Christmas time in Milwaukee in like the 1910s and see what it was like. And like with Charlotte Mary Yonge, it just feels like people are people in every age, in spite of the differences in technology or the difference in time period. Like they're dealing with the same questions and the same problems. They draw comfort from the same things. Betsy is starting her second year of high school. She's a sophomore, and it starts at the start of the school year. She's very smart. I love the description of her going to the library. I love the description of her friends, her crowd, as she calls it. Like they're always dropping in on each other. They have the best jokes. They throw a dance. Oh, I love the description of their dance. But with the boys in her crowd, Betsy feels like, they just all look at her as a friend, and she wants to learn how to be, a little bit more grown up, a little bit more fascinating, and she's invited to go to Milwaukee by her friend Tib. So we go with her to Milwaukee and we meet Tib's family. They're German, and it's so fascinating to hear about their background and their traditions. The illustrations in this, by the way, I forgot to show you the illustrations in the Perilous Gard. Well, I showed you that one, but they're so charming. But anyway, Betsy comes back from Milwaukee and has like a little list. Like she and Tib stay up all night, and she makes a plan to just make some changes, and some of them go well and some of them don't go so well. Just so charming. Definitely makes me feel like I need to go back and reread the whole series from the beginning. Speaking of series that I've been reading, I started reading C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia last year. I bought a box set, which I'm sure I'd read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I hadn't actually read the whole series before. So I got up through number 5 last year. I am going in chronological rather than publication order. My favorite, I think, so far has been The Horse and His Boy, although the original Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is obviously very, very classic. But after 5, I kind of felt like I needed a break. But then as the end of this year was approaching, I was like, well, I do want to finish the last 2, which is The Silver Chair and The Last Battle, the Final Battle. We don't have any of the Pevensies in this one, but we do have Eustace, Perilous, who was a character who we saw in the Dawn Treader book. I don't think this is as strong as the other books, and yet I think because I'd had a break from it, I really enjoyed coming back to it. I enjoy the fantasy, the sort of high courtesy of Narnia and Prince Rilian, I believe is the name of the prince, and like the caverns and the crazy creatures. There's an owl named Glimfeather. There's also a character named Puddleglum, who is very funny. He like always looks on the negative side of everything. "Good morning, guests," he said. "Though when I say good, I don't mean it won't probably turn to rain, or it might be snow, or fog, or thunder. You didn't get any sleep, I dare say." "Yes, we did, though," said Jill. "We had a lovely night." "Ah," said the Marshwiggle, shaking his head. "I see you're making the best of a bad job." Of course, C.S. Lewis's works are very allegorical. They have many Christian themes, and all of his lessons are really important reminders for both children and adults. Aslan is in this book. He gives Jill some reminders, some like steps that she needs to go through, and he reminds her like, okay, repeat this every morning and every evening, and of course, sometimes she forgets. And sometimes the steps don't really turn out the way they expect them to turn out. But even when they get off course, you know, Aslan has a plan. At one point, they're like in this deep, dark place, and like they're, you know, prisoners. Oh, and I think Jill says something like, "Oh, this is the worst." And Puddleglum says something like, "Well, actually, we are following one of those steps, one of those instructions that Aslan gave us. So even though it's awful, like, it's good. We're on the right track." I'll show you one of the illustrations from this one. I really like this edition. It's the Harper Collins Full Color Collector's Edition. So yes, very fun to finish that. Just one last Chronicles of Narnia book, and then I will have read them all. I bought this book back in the spring, and I think I've shown it a couple times throughout the year, and for whatever reason, I just couldn't sink into it, even though I do really like G.K. Chesterton. His quirky humor is very fun. This is called The Club of Queer Trades. We follow Basil Grant, who is quite the character. Few people knew him because, like all poets, he could do without them. He welcomed a human face as he might welcome a sudden blend of color in a sunset, but he no more felt the need of going out to parties than he felt the need of altering the sunset clouds. He lived in a queer and comfortable garret in the roofs of Lambeth. You know, it's funny, the first, story in the collection didn't really grab me, but the second and third I really liked. So then it really picked up, and I did read through it pretty quickly. But it's just very zany, very philosophical, very British. So many great little lines that definitely resonate with regards to modern culture. "I agree that they have to live in something worse than barbarism. They have to live in a fourth-rate civilization. But yet I am practically certain that the majority of people here are good people, and being good is an adventure far more violent and daring than sailing around the world." In this same neighborhood, he says that a real possibility remains that at any chance corner, the great cross of the great cathedral of Rennes may strike down the street like a thunderbolt. In each chapter, in each scenario, we learn about someone who has invented an entirely new trade, like an entirely new occupation. And some of them are extremely clever and very funny. I believe that G.K. Chesterton did these illustrations himself, which is pretty awesome. I didn't know he could draw. I like that. I sympathize with doing the illustrations of my own books. So they are basically short stories, although there is a little bit of a arc, like a little bit of a beginning and an end. Very quick, but very fun. If you like Chesterton, definitely check this one out. I tried to make myself a little list. What else was I going to tell you guys about? Yes, there'll be more quotations over on the Substack, bookishprincess.substack.com if you want to check that out. There are a lot of other Substacks that I've really been getting into lately. Anthony Esselin, he writes sometimes some pieces for Magnificat, which is this prayer journal that I really love. But he's on Substack, and he does like weekly posts about like a word or a poem or a movie or a song, and they're really clever and really fun. Also, Perilous, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they do like daily little roundup of just like 5 different quotations from different saints. And I really love that as well. I wrote down some other non-bookish things that I've been enjoying. The Lila Rose podcast, I really love her posts. Also, Peterson Academy. Jordan Peterson released basically an online university, and there are all sorts of different courses that you can sign up for. I've just been listening to the different lectures basically as podcasts. They're so interesting. There's one about nutrition. There's one about the history of Western music. Jonathan Pajot is on there. Jordan Peterson, of course, has some lectures on there. Part of me feels like I should sit down properly as if it was a classroom and like take some notes, because I'm usually listening to it in the car. And there have often been little things that I'm like, oh, I must remember that. Like in the music lecture, the speaker was saying how in the West, we've been obsessed with harmony, whereas other musical traditions, like there are other musical aspects that they are more interested in. But he goes through basically the history of music and how when they first invented notation, like that was a really big deal, and that made so many other things in music possible because you could have a written record of, you know, how you were supposed to play a song. Isn't it so funny how many things in the world you take for granted? Like there's so many things that it's like, this is easy because somebody else figured it out hundreds of years ago, and then other people figured it out and figured it out and figured it out. But yeah, that course is The History of Western Music with Samuel Andreev, and I also have really been enjoying Introduction to Nutrition with Max Lugavere. All right, so I think we will now jump back in time and just do a little montage of August through autumn. Some fun adventures. I don't know when I'll be back with another upload. I do want to do my top reads of the year. I always do that. I started with top 15 in 2015, and so I think I'll have top 24 in 24. So it'd be fun to get that done. But yeah, I'm just kind of waiting for God to tell me what he wants me to do with my YouTube, with Substack in the new year. We'll just let him take the lead and see how it unfolds. Now let's do a little time travel. It's time for a Disney interlude. Hello there friends, it's Emmy here, Bookish Princess. We've just been enjoying a lovely afternoon at the Grand Floridian. I filmed a little time lapse because the clouds going over the palm trees are just so beautiful. I have not been really vlogging this trip, so I'm thinking I'll just kind of do a light little Disney vlog in my bookish reading wrap-up because it's honestly so relaxing to just enjoy the trip and not worry about vlogging it. I've had a lot of fun over the years vlogging Disney trips. But yes, I am going to fill you guys in on what I've been reading. We're moving to the Polynesian, and I thought I might get Athos to film with me there because he's been reading some interesting things that he's been telling me about. So I think we'll do a little sit-down reading catch-up at the Polynesian. But yes, just enjoying. This has been my reading spot for today. Just my balcony here at the Grand. Hard to top this with the palm trees and the lovely sky. friends, it's Emma here, the Bookish Princess. Here is my brother Athos.
Hey guys.
We are at the Polynesian Resort. We have this beautiful Stitch. Can you guys see Stitch? There he is. And Lilo and Nani on the surfboard. So we thought we would do a quick little vacation reading update. Athos has been reading all sorts of interesting things that he's been telling me about. Tell them about how you found this book, first of all, because it's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, so I'm reading Gulliver's Travels at the moment, the past couple weeks. I found the book at there's a used bookstore in my local library that sells sort of their surplus books and any sort of, they'll get donations from local people, or like, we have all these books, what do we do with them? Library doesn't have space for them either, so they sell them to the general public for like $1 each. So
and this is the Penguin English Library cloth-bound edition.
Very nice edition. $1. What a steal!
Yeah, I feel like these are kind of pricey when you buy them.
So, yeah, pretty
fun.
fun.
What do you think of Gulliver's Travels?
I've been very much enjoying it. Lots of caustic, lampooning
commentary
and social commentary.
He calls out Sir Isaac Newton.
Yeah, Isaac Newton was getting
he
roasted.
goes after him.
I have the line there for that, actually, because I just underlined it.
He takes aim.
Yeah, because he was saying Isaac Newton should maybe stick to science. He doesn't know about politics and anything else. So, well, that's pretty much what he was saying. Because he was saying that...
It's, of course, Jonathan Swift.
Yes, who's known for his, social commentary.
He wrote that, A Modest Proposal.
Here we go. So he was saying that, this island of academics, which includes people like Newton, of course, despite having no background in public affairs or matters of state, love opining on them. And so he said that this comes from a very common infirmity of human nature, inclining us to be more curious and conceited in matters where we have least concern, and for which we are least adapted either by study or nature. And apparently that was directly aimed at Isaac Newton, who had been saying things about economics, which Jonathan Swift did not agree with. So,
one thing I like about this is that there's reckless capitalization. We were talking about this. Like, why all of these, almost every proper noun, or no, that's the thing, not the proper nouns, the improper nouns.
Every noun.
Every noun, full stop, is capitalized. And it's just all of them.
Swift is a capitalization fiend.
He just loves it. But weren't you saying that apparently the island the scientists are on, that the character visits, it's like held up with a magnet? And Athos was saying it's a really cool description.
Yeah.
Of sort of a sci-fi scenario of how a giant magnet.
It seemed a pretty sophisticated idea of, he used a giant magnet to hold up an island. But apparently there's a whole chapter that Swift dedicates to describing in detail how the magnet works. And the footnotes were saying that was meant to be a lampoon of the scientific papers and the philosophical transactions like Newton's and other scientists at the time. It's a bad sign for me that I didn't find it as dull as Swift intended it to be. I was like, ooh, cool. But apparently Swift meant it to be boring. So that means I'm right in Swift's crosshairs, I guess.
I guess so. Tell us about, though, I want to add this to my reading list, a Catholic author who wrote true sci-fi short stories.
So Gene Wolfe is the writer that we're talking about here.
Literary artist.
Yeah, who's a sci-fi writer, and he has these Catholic themes that he weaves in, sometimes explicitly, sometimes less so. There were these children. The name of this one was the Eye Flash Miracles, and it's about sort of the government has a secret program that's meant to study psychic abilities in children, and it's essentially, but the subtext is that it's not like psychic, abilities. Essentially, it's the children are prophets. They have a connection to the divine, and the government's essentially trying to figure out a way to control this. And when it doesn't work, they kill almost all the children. One of them gets away, and then the story kind of follows that child's essentially is protected by angels. There's a scene where there's actually kind of topical for stuff today. There's a scene with a supercomputer that's sort of cataloging all of society into it, and the child is blind, and so he sneaks into the computer room. Someone sends him in. I'm just giving the spoilers all over the place. He sneaks into this computer room, and of course he's blind, so he can't actually see anything, but through his divine connection, he can sometimes see things or feels things, and he can feel the computer speaking to him, and the computer says its name is Legion. So kind of there you go, scary computer. Watch out for those supercomputers. There might be
Don't
more
trust
than
them.
just computers to them. But yeah, he's a very good writer. He likes to work in allusions a lot to other things. He had a Rubaiyat reference, which, like, it's fun. He throws in these references, which if you didn't get them, you'd just keep reading, and it wouldn't really affect your comprehension.
Omar Khayyam.
But,
Rubaiyat?
that was part of the... There was another called... I'm just going to go off on a tangent. There was another one called Seven American Nights, which I told you about already, too, which the overall concept was America has fallen, Iran is the new principal power in the world, and the sort of aristocracy, the nobility of Iran would go on tours of America to see the ruins, similar to how Victorians would go to Greece to see the ruins. And there's a scene in a bar in America where this Iranian young aristocrat is just talking to some local Americans, and the Americans are like, "Oh, you're from Iran?" He's like, "Yes." And then the Iranian... that's the thing. All the Americans, due to the ambiguous fall of America, a lot of them have weird mutations. And the Iranian said something about, like, "Oh, it's, like, too bad that, it's too bad that you guys all have these mutations. What a shame." And the American says this quotation to him. I can't remember it word for word, but it's something along the lines of, like, you might remember it. It was like the beautiful pot, the ugly pot says, "Oh no, the creator must be evil. He made me ugly." And then the beautiful pot says, "Well, someday he will break you and remake you into a beautiful pot." And do you remember what? I completely butchered the paraphrase, but we know
I don't remember this.
It's the Rubaiyat.
Wow.
Then he just throws that in, and the Iranian guy doesn't catch the reference.
The American
makes the reference. The Iranian guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and the story just goes on and doesn't focus on it. But that gives a little bit of character study to him, because it's like the Americans, who the Iranians are looking down on as being the peasantry who live in this ruined society, actually know more about this guy's culture than he himself does, because they've kind of left behind their roots in their ascent to global ascendancy. But he does those are all over the place. Cool little allusions that enhance the story if you catch them, but they're not necessary. So,
that's awesome.
He's really fun. Gene Wolfe.
You've also been reading. Where did you find these Polynesian folktales? He found a book of Polynesian folktales.
Yeah, Padraig Home. Padraic.
Padraig.
Yeah.
That's the Irish version of the word Patrick.
Yes, he was essentially asked by the state government of Hawaii, if I remember correctly, to record a lot of their folktales in sort of a nice, confined, in a way that they can easily be written and expressed. And so he collected a whole bunch of them, the Tales of Maui, the 7 Great Deeds of Maui, most of which appear in You're Welcome, in that rapid song. He lists out pretty much all of them. The shark god was a favorite of mine. Kauhuhu was the story of the shark god who destroys the village. But it's just a fun, cool little short story collection. Lots of very evocative scenery of the islands. They sound beautiful. I totally want to go to Hawaii now. But then it turns on a dime. A storm comes and it's terrifying. The oceans, the waves are crazy. The last one, this is a sort of nonfiction book called The River of Doubt, which was about Theodore Roosevelt after his failed run for president. Can't remember the year, but he had already been president. He was running again. This is when he ran as the Bull Moose Party, because the Republicans didn't like him. He made a third party and it didn't work out. But and apparently he had this habit of whenever he failed at something, he wanted to go do some sort of very physically exhausting try. Yes, a cathartic thing. He'd go on an African safari. He'd go out west. He'd wander. He'd go somewhere. I think when his wife died, he literally just went out west on a horse and was just gone for months or something. So this time, he decided he wanted to map out an unmapped Amazonian river. So this tributary of the Amazon River called the River of Doubt, hence the name of the book. He went down to South America and explored it with a little team. Barely came back alive. It was kind of thug on the team. There was some backstabbing. Most people made it back alive. His son was there. It was a pretty riveting adventure. It was fun to hear how they conquered everything. Theodore Roosevelt almost didn't make it back. He got really sick. Something I thought was interesting is when he was sick, he couldn't even walk. He was completely delirious. He was on They put him in the canoe, and they just put a little tarp over him, and they thought he was going to die, but he did revive, thankfully. I think he was saved. One of their local, like, porters was getting swept away, and he jumped into the water to save him, and his, like, I think something stabbed into his leg, and he got some sort of infection in his leg, and so it was pretty bad. But when he was in his delirium on the boat, he kept repeating, "In Xanadu did Kubla Khan, in Xanadu did Kubla Khan." Like, just those first lines of Kubla Khan, apparently he just was reciting like a mantra
was what came to mind.
in his delirium. So maybe he was seeing the secret second half.
Maybe he was.
But yeah, that was an interesting book too. So that's Athos's reading lately.
Athos's recent reading. How'd you
Give me some
enjoy-
applicable reading.
Applicable?
Give me a reading.
Well, I
anything
just
similar?
reread Persuasion during our trip, which was very relaxing. I just chose a fun read. I'm reading The Way of Perfection by St. Teresa of Avila. That is our August book for my little online book club.
Book club.
We read Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah.
Hugely enjoyed that. How did you enjoy our Disney trip? I wasn't gonna do a separate Disney book. Tried Tiana's Bayou.
I think was this the first time we've been to Liberty Tree since it became family style?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, the family style Liberty Tree was a lot of fun.
It was very delicious.
The food was very good. Tiana's was all right. I feel like it could have been worse. It also could have been better. Fun to give a sign off to Dinosaur. Give a final Dinoland trip, since that's long for this world. It's gonna go extinct.
Is there a
Tragic.
truly extinct?
Exactly.
Do they have a date of when it's?
I think it's supposed to be in the fall, but I don't think they said anything official yet.
That'll be sad. What are you
Tragic.
gonna do? What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Such is life.
All right. Well, thank you for filling
It's
us
been
in.
a pleasure
It's
talking
always
to
so
the
interesting to
Kingdom.
hear Athos's reads.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you guys later.